So if you were curious, what is Nima's top sports games of 2024? Well, good news, I have the answer for you coming up very shortly. And if you don't care about sports ball, don't worry, I'm going to fly through this category pretty quickly and get to single player game of 2024. Anyway, let's start off with our best sports game of 2024, and we'll first start at the nominee of MLB 24. Now, this game is one that kind of surprised me, honestly. It's been a while since I've played any baseball games in general, but I had heard so many positive things about this game. When I gave it a shot, I actually enjoyed myself. I understand that for the most part, watching baseball is incredibly boring, and even sometimes playing baseball is a little bit boring, but this was actually entertaining, and I found a lot of fun to be had here, especially just going through a few quick plays and even like a tournament mode. Now, I understand like there's a deep franchise mode and there's a lot of online stuff, and of course I'm sure they got the gotcha packs and all that kind of stuff, but for the most part, if you're looking for a decent baseball game, I think this is a pretty decent one. Our next nominee is a game that I have thought about putting in a video where I talk about the games that are complete guilty pleasures of mine, and in many ways, it's embarrassing as a gamer to admit I spend money on this, and I even play it every night, at least for an hour, and that game is Madden 25. I know, I love football, I do, and I wish I wasn't hamstrung to like the Madden series. And before any of you jump in and say, yeah, but have you played this indie game that no one's ever heard of? It's just like football, but without the NFL teams. And let me tell you, so I have played a number of these indie games and AA games, trying to find something that's a decent substitute for Madden, and they're not there yet. They're really not. I hope they are. I continue to buy them because I want them to be there. But until further notice, I have to keep playing Madden. I love football. I love the franchise mode. I think they're actually making a relatively positive direction in that by addressing some of the concerns and needs that the community wanted. Is it enough? No, but they're at least working towards it. And yes, there's always tons of glitches, but nothing game breaking, and honestly, it still has one of the deepest franchises using a modern NFL roster. And yes, I do realize I'm paying $70 for that roster. Anyway, another game that I think had some serious woes and has now made quite a comeback, and that is WWE 2K24. Now, typically I'm not a huge wrestling guy. I do enjoy watching some of like the main event stuff, just because I have Peacock and why not, but I don't really get into it. I don't know a lot of the storylines or anything like that, but I can tell you this. When I was in middle school, I played a ton of WWE games, especially like the Shut Your Mouth, those like PS2 era. I just absolutely loved those games, and I've yet to find anything that is even a resemblance of those type of games, but I can say that I actually think 2K's onto something. With 2024, they are getting really close to being that original experience that I remember, and of course, they just took a bath from the last one that came out with 2K22 was just awful. 2K23 was okay, I heard. I never actually got a chance to play it, but for my money, 2K24 has been really good and definitely worth your time if you're into wrestling games. But our winner of the best sports game of 2024 has got to be NCAA 25. It made its triumphant return this year, being away for over a decade, and honestly, I was never an NCAA fan. I just haven't been into college sports that much, and so when this did come out, knowing how rare the series has been, I had to check it out, and I played it so much more than I thought I would. The one thing that I was really impressed with was it felt like a different game than Madden. You see, one of the big concerns I had was, is this just going to be Madden but with, a coat of paint type thing? But no, it actually feels very organic and different from what they've set up in Madden, so that was a welcome surprise, as well as just taking a created character and leveling up and getting undrafted and going into Madden was also really cool. But I ultimately really liked picking like a small college I've never heard of and just trying to win over recruits and things like that and build that college into a better team. That was honestly the most fun I've had in a football game in quite a while. Alright, now on to the best single player game of 2024, starting off with none other than Another Crab's Treasure. This game was something I was pretty hyped up for a while, and then when I finally got to play it, I saw that it was so much more than just a Souls-like ripoff with a crab. Now, this game had its own unique story, its own unique characters, and while sometimes a lot of Souls-like feel like you're on the outside of a world looking in, this one definitely included you into that world, and I loved some of the snarkiness to it, some of the ways that the characters were kind of smart alecks, and the dialogue that goes into that, as well as like the crab himself just almost being empathetic toward the whole situation or annoyed by it. But ultimately, this was a great game. If you haven't checked it out, it's definitely worth your time, especially after they've done some patch updates on the Nintendo Switch version. That one I can say is also really good. It's not up there with the Xbox or PS5 yet, but it is much more playable than it was. And this whole charming story, while being cutthroat and brutal and having to fight some just crazy bosses, is a lot of fun. And honestly, I think one of those games that just kind of got slept on. Another one of those games is our next nominee, and that is Rise of Ronin. Now, I remember when this game came out, a lot of people said, oh, it's just another samurai game. And I bought that. I didn't think about that until I was like, wait, another open world samurai game. Well, how many are there? There's only like one other one I can think of. So I think this game was just sort of tossed aside, but honestly, this game has some great combat, a pretty good story, and a lot of really fun exploration about it. I will say that my biggest complaint about the game was honestly towards the end, it seemed like it just kept going. It's one of those games that felt a little too bloated, but ultimately I had a lot of fun with it outside of that, and the ending is well worth it. Like I said, it just has a very addictive combat loop, and I think this game should be given its flowers. Now for our next nominee is a game that I played on the Nintendo Switch, and I actually enjoyed it so much that I went back and played the other games in this series, and that game is Turnip Boy Robs a Bank. Yes, this game was so addictive, so much fun, had me running around kind of loot chasing at the same time, that roguelike style of trying to bust into a bank, bust into different areas of that bank, get as far as you can into it, steal, collect all the money you can, defeat enemies, come back, upgrade yourself, and go back and do it all again. It was so much fun, and I think the thing is what I appreciated about it was that it really opens up. Like very early on, you kind of assume that you're just robbing this bank at this one location, and yes, you are, but this location is gigantic, and it has its own world inside of it. You are kind of put on this time limit, but that time limit becomes arbitrary after a while, and ultimately, this game just opens up more and more until you beat it, and for me, I wasn't ready for it to be over. I was ready for more, and so I absolutely love this game. I hope that they make a sequel to this one or in this style, because it is a fantastic single-player game. Now, our next nominee is another game that I've talked about before. In fact, it's shown up in other categories of the Best of 2024 wrap-up, and it's a game called Stellar Blade that will enthrall you with its fast-paced hack-and-slash combat. It's almost a perfect meld between Dynasty Warriors and Souls-like in a lot of ways, where it's very hacky and slashy, but it's not incredibly easy. You will run into enemies and bosses that will give you a little bit of a challenge, yet without being it so overwhelmingly difficult that you want to give up. You also have the story that is pushing you forward, as you are eager to see exactly how you are going to save humanity. But apparently saving humanity is not the only thing you have to do to actually win an award on this show. No, because our winner for the best single-player game of 2024 goes to none other than Black Myth Wukong, which I think is a game that took a lot of people by surprise. There is, of course, a lot of gamers who were very eager to get their hands on it, but most of the media and a lot of people who were predicting futures and sales and things of that nature did not foresee Black Myth Wukong being as popular as it was. Now, there was a pretty tight lip on exactly how the game was going to look and how it was going to perform, but once it got there, we were all happy to see that this game came out exactly how we wanted it to. It is that perfect blend between Souls-like, where you got a little bit of difficulty, but a lot of action, and no enemy ever seems too difficult to overcome, so you never seem to get too discouraged by any of the enemies. And I think this shows that we love Souls-like games. We love the big transforming grotesque creatures. We love fighting all the enemies, but sometimes we don't want to have our asses kicked from one end to the other constantly. Now, I can say that yes, I think that this was a game that balanced its difficulty a little bit off of Elden Ring. It saw how well Elden Ring was received when people are given a little bit more of a chance. But for me, it wasn't only the combat that kept this game so engaging. In many ways, it was the story, it was the environment, it was the world around you. As you had to fight and defeat different masters to obtain their abilities and their form, you also got to learn more about this world. This game also had one other thing about it that is so important, and that was the performance. In these type of games that last last minute dodge or that quick counter is the difference between life and death. And if your game is lagging out or giving you problems, then it's gonna be incredibly aggravating. And while some people felt like the graphics weren't as good as they could be, I think I can speak for most gamers at least and say the performance is far more important than having incredibly pretty graphics. Because the thing is, the graphics in this game are not bad. They're just not as shiny as they could be, but ultimately it's a great game, and this is why it is our winner for the best single player game of 2024. As we head on to the next category, please hit that like and subscribe button to help this channel grow.